So,
How did the Vietnam War impact your life personally? Did your daily life change when the war started?
Uh, Not really. I knew some fellas that were in the war, but I was older, and my husband was older, and was not considered to go. And I can't say that it really affected my life personally. I always felt bad that we were over there. I guess that's all I can say about that.
Did anyone you knew face discrimination in the workforce, and if so, how?
Well, I worked 3 years out of nurses training in a hospital, and I do not recall anybody having been discriminated against. And then I worked as a visiting nurse, and so I was more on my own. But back in the office, I can't say that anybody was discriminated against. If they didn't do their job well, of course they were let go. But as far as being discriminated against, I have not seen that in when I worked, and I probably worked about 20 years in my lifetime out of the house.
Okay. Did you take part in any protests in the civil rights movement, and if so, how?
I lived in the north the whole time, and it did not affect me, and I did not go to any protests. I didn't write letters. The people I knew who were African American were very nice people. I didn't feel that up north that we discriminated against them as much as I guess they were done in the South, and still are, apparently.
How did you feel about the Cold War and its effect on the American public? Did you think that the Russians would attack the U.S.?
Well, I do remember the Cold War in certain degrees of it, but I never felt that the Russians at that time would attack us. I think we still had a good defense, military defense, to protect the United States. So I don't think it affected me that much. That was right after the Second World War, and we were progressing very nicely here, economically, and so I did not worry me at the time.
What was your opinion of the hippie movement? Did you participate?
Well, the hippie movement, I was raising children, and so I certainly was not involved with that. And I wasn't really happy about them. They were always protesting the Vietnam War, and having riots, and just going off and doing their own thing, and that was not the way I was brought up. I don't know, what was the last part of the question? Did it affect me?
Yeah. Did you participate?
No, of course I didn't participate. Okay.
Were you emotionally connected to the death of JFK, and how did it affect you?
Well, I do remember his death. I remember where I was, and it was just a very sad time, because he was a good president. It didn't really, personally affect me, to the fact that I did feel bad for the family and our country, because he was doing well. He was a good president.
Was Martin Luther King an influence in your life, and if so, how?
Well, I can't say that he had any influence on me. I knew African American people since I lived in the North, and everybody got along fine, as far as I knew. But as we all know, they were not treated as well in the South, and they needed to be treated better. but I can't say that it had a big effect on me.
What were your political views on the Vietnam War? Was it necessary to send in troops?
Well, that's another question that you hated to see boys go over there, and that's when people didn't understand why we were there. It did not have a big effect on me. I was in a position where I was a housewife raising children. And naturally, I knew some people that had to go to Vietnam, but not immediate family. It was just a sad situation. It was sad that we had to go over there and did not really accomplish anything by it.
Did you think that space travel was possible and if the Americans could accomplish it? When the Russians made it into space on April 12, 1961, did you believe it?
Yes, I knew whenever we started thinking about space travel, and you just sort of had the faith that we could do it, and of course we did. And as far as the Russians, yes, I believed them. Are they saying they didn't? But
Do you think that it was the right decision to drop the voting age to 18? Why or why not?
I was 21 when I went to vote, and I don't know if I would have been ready to vote at 18. And I wonder now, because how much do you children learn in high school about the voting and who you're voting for and what you're voting for? Do you listen to the news? Do you know what's going on? Do you know your congressman? Do you know anybody? Do you think at 18? Sometimes I don't know whether it's a good idea to be voting at 18. You should be out in the world a little bit more. So maybe I don't like that idea. It just came to me.